were on the outskirts of London, and the bombing was bad, and people slept in the subway stations. You know, they picked up their night teams and their kids and their dogs and retreated down underground until the next day. But life went on, we managed. Right now, 104. I had my birthday, it's the last day of the year, and then I'll be 105. Both my parents were teachers, and I had two much older sisters who were born before the war, and I was born after the war, 1920. I was trained to be a volunteer, that's all. I was in the, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the auxiliary army. Women could sign up and volunteer, and I spent a year training before the war actually broke out. I spent a year in Aldershot, which is an army centre. I was just a secretary. I thought the whole thing was a waste of time. But it was all, I was just sick. I was secretary to the general. It all seemed a waste of time to me, but somebody must have thought it was important. And I've always just done volunteer work, and mainly human rights stuff from Amnesty International and a couple of other organisations to try and make the world a bit better. A friend of mine, Jess Kay, invited friends to gather round her table and write letters for Amnesty. And I thought, oh well, okay, I can do that. And that was the beginning of my involvement with Amnesty. I think the war was well underway at that point. So it's probably about 1940 something or towards the end of the second part of the war. And we thought we were very noble and very clever, sitting round our table writing these letters. Anyway, that's what we did. Writing letters for. We didn't have any of all this technical stuff in those days. But in those early days, we always thought that letters had a lot of power, which I think they did. We were on the outskirts of London, and the bombing was bad, and people slept in the subway stations. You know, they picked up their night teams and their kids and their dogs and retreated down underground until the next day. But life went on, we managed. And then I think it was probably, no, not probably, it certainly was very naive of us ordinary folk in Britain who thought that things would go back to normal after the war. We stood up to Hitler, and we all thought that the world would return to what it was before, and England would have her natural place as the marine power of the time and transporting world goods from here to there. But it wasn't like that. And of course it didn't go back to what it was been like before the war. It was very dreary. England was very depressed at that point. My husband was a physicist, and Eric was a letter from Oxford in Banbury, from the organisation in Canada, in Kingston, Alcan. Do you want to come and work at Alcan? There's a job for you right now. So we had to quickly decide if that's what we wanted to do. You know, so we had to be serious and sit down. Did we really want to go to that country? And England being a bit miserable at that point, we decided, what the hell, let's go and try it and see. So we did. In 1951, we decided to go to Canada. We had 3 small kids and a dog. I'll never forget, we got to Kingston Station, we came by ship, so off we set for this unknown country, and you know, and everything seemed so big to us, in size, I mean. And we got in at 3 o'clock in the morning with these 3 little kids and a dog. And out of the shadows came this tall man. And I mean, really, you know, disappeared out of the darkness. And he said, "You must be the Perrymans. I'm Mr. Rimmer. I'm head of laboratory labs," which was Alcan Labs. And he said, "We've taken a cottage for you for a couple of weeks so you can get settled in. And you'll find the beds all made up. And my wife and I will come back tomorrow morning and pick you up and take you to get groceries." So that little cottage was there for a long time. It's been pulled down now to make way for the hospital, but I could tell you exactly where it was. So he dropped us off there, and we settled the kids into bed, and Poppy made tea, and just made the best of it. We're here. And that's a long time ago. I joined this friend of mine who already had got an Amnesty group going. I went and helped join that, and we met once a week and sat at her dining room table and wrote letters. It's a woman from the county who had gone to Toronto to listen to C.S. Lewis, who was giving a talk. And this woman came back and was planning to tell about her experience. And a group of us went to the county to listen to her. And one woman, much younger, and I can't remember her name, I can see her now. When the meeting with this woman in the county, when she finished talking, this tall woman from here stood up and said, "Well, I recommend that we start a group and we'll call it Grannies for Africa." And that was the beginning. It was very simple. There was C.S. Lewis. He brought 200 grannies from Africa to Toronto for some AIDS conference that was on in Toronto. And he somehow found the money and brought all these African grandmothers and the same number of Canadian grandmothers to go to Toronto and intermingle with the African grandmothers and get to hear their story firsthand. And I was one of those who went. How he chose us, I can't remember. But we went to Toronto, and it was an AIDS conference, right? and met up with, and we spent 2 days with them, you know, eating together and dancing and telling stories and crying and I don't know how it is now, but certainly for me at this age, volunteering was one way of feeling that you're doing something. You know, you're trying to help the people.